frankly, I think education is one field that can stand to benefit the most from AI. I mean, every single child or student or learner in the world can have a super high quality teacher that is working with them throughout life. I mean, that is a game changer. When we launched edX in 2011, I still remember in an opening speech at the announcement conference with Harvard and MIT, I said, look, I'd like to reach 1 billion people around the world.
Welcome to this Edly Academy Spotlight video. I'm extremely happy to welcome Anant Agarwal to this video, to this interview. I've been meaning to do this for a long time now. So this is part of Edly Academy, which is a repository of content that we create on edtech in general, as part of our effort at Edly, which is a global provider of educational content. So I'm going to introduce you, Anant Agarwal, although you are the founder of edX, of course, edX.org, which everybody knows. You are the Chief Academic Officer at 2U and, of course, Professor at MIT. I'm Régis Demo. I'm a VP of Engineering at Edly. And really happy to have you here, Anant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your academic series, and delighted to join you to have a conversation about cool stuff.
So speaking of cool stuff, can we talk about AI?
Cool stuff. I guess that today, if you want to talk about cool stuff, it's about AI. But even there, I guess AI is old stuff. I think for some reason, everybody prefers to talk about GenAI. But you ask what GenAI is, and I don't think people know what GenAI is.
So I used to work in AI when it was called
I actually was involved with AI and so on when it was called AI. And then a lot of the symbolic approaches to AI when AI was looking to mirror how humans thought. And then machine learning came about, which is much later, which became the cool new kid on the block, where they said, look, let's not try to mimic how the human brain works. Let's use statistical techniques to do or create intelligence. And that was machine learning. And then now the focus seems to have gone back to the neural nets and deep learning, which actually mimic more in how the brain works than machine learning.
For me, I feel like we have been wrong in machine learning for like 35 years. And we could have, if we had just stayed course.
I don't think so. I think all of these developments were critical. There's a lot that we learned in machine learning. And frankly, neural net-based approaches also began to be called machine learning. So it's not like deep learning, which is really learning with neural nets, was different. It was simply, it became a way of machine learning. And so anything that was cool was called machine learning. And then after that, everything that was cool became to be called AI, and then everything that was cool became to be called GenAI. But really, GenAI itself is a form of machine learning, which itself is a form of AI.
So that's a question that I like to ask people, friends and family as well. Like, what kind of personal use of GenAI did you make recently that you thought was cool? So, for instance, I was playing with my stepson, and I used GenAI to check the rules of Pokemon, the card game. We didn't know what was the effect of paralysis. So what kind of cool use of GenAI did you have?
Well, I'll give you two answers. One is that there isn't much you can do today that doesn't make use of GenAI. So when you go and use any search platform, the search platforms now give you a summary of what you're looking for before they show you links. And so in that sense, search has changed completely. And those search techniques use GenAI to summarize answers to your questions. So in that sense, you're using GenAI every day. But the second way I would answer it is that, I often go to specific GenAI tools like ChatGPT and so on. And I use that in some of my teaching. I'm actually working on a course on how to use AI in education and learning. And so there, I try to use ChatGPT as a teacher would to try to figure out how we can make education better, how teachers can teach better, how students can learn better. And so that's one way in which I go in. And as an example, I might say things like, here's a topic. Give me a highly motivating example for this knowledge transfer topic that I can show students. So that's an example of how I might have used GenAI in the recent past.
So you're working on a new course that is
Yes.
targeted specifically at education.
Yes.
Is it going to be published on edX.org?
We'll, certainly it will be published on edX and try to figure out. It's still in its early infancy.
Yeah,
I'm still thinking about it, dreaming about it. So there's a long way to go for the course. And but part of what I'm doing now is trying to get a sense of what are the ways in which people can learn and teach better using AI, and how AI can afford simply better tools for teachers. Those are the kind of things that I'm doing at the moment.
So when you dream about that course, are you dreaming that you are teaching this course online or on-site, a bit of both, blended?
No, it's pretty much online.
Yeah.
What I deeply believe in these days is that AI will be only as good as the data that you provide, and both in real time and past data history, for AI to learn and then personalize teaching to you. And digital learning or online learning is a way where you have very rich data collection happening all the time. So on edX, for example, if you're taking a course, on the edX platform, we are, as you know, I'm sure, we are capturing every single mouse click, every single activity that a learner is doing. And that huge history, that huge event stream is captured. And that event stream can be used to really train intelligence forms of interventions and teaching that can enable adaptation or personalization to people. So that data stream is really important. I've also taught for 36 years at MIT, but 3 decades of classroom teaching. And there it's very, very hard to get data. While you're teaching, you get some data, you can look at the students, and you can see some students going, what's that? So you know that based on their expressions, you know that they're not understanding things and so on. So you get some real-time data, but a large majority of students are usually asleep in the class or doing social or other stuff. And so you're not getting much insight into how they're doing in the course. As another example, when you give homeworks and so on, you have no idea how they're doing because they're doing the homeworks in their dorm rooms on paper and pencil. So you have no idea where did people have difficulty. You have no idea that, hey, people need help. So unless someone physically reaches out to you, or unless you do a survey, or unless you give an exam, you don't get much feedback. So it's very very coarse-grained feedback. And so using AI in a physical setting is certainly much harder in my mind than in an online setting where you can get real-time access to extremely rich data, where the data can be used to personalize AI for you.
And so this is probably way too soon in the interview to ask you this, but still. So do you think this will be part of your legacy? When you build these courses and you collect these data streams, that you can use this data to build then even better courses in the future, and then other people can use this data to build upon that? Do you see this just as important as the material or the teaching itself?
Look, I don't know about legacy and so on. Those are very grandiose terms, and I don't think any of us on this earth is particularly important. But I've seen many examples of how the process of building and teaching has had impacts down the road. So, on edX, for instance, as we gather a lot of data, even well before AI, as we gather this data, there are a lot of people doing research on the data. We're doing A/B testing on the platform all the time, where many of the professors are doing A/B testing on the platform to see what works and what doesn't work all the time. And so, in that sense, edX is a large experimental platform. When we launched edX 12 years ago, actually more, 14 years ago, I talked about how I would like to see edX and the open edX ecosystem as a particle accelerator for learning. So just like the CERN accelerator was accelerating physics and understanding of nature, I hope that edX would enable and accelerate learning. And one of the key tenets of that is gathering real-time detailed data and sharing that data with people, doing A/B testing on the platform so that researchers can use the data to understand how learning works and how we can teach and learn much better than we could. So in that sense, my hope is that through the work that the entire Open edX community is doing, through the work that edX is doing, through all the instructors and learners are doing, we are learning more about learning and simply learning how to teach and learn better.
Coming back to your, when you're describing your frustration about like when you teach in a class, you don't really know if the students are engaged. Do you feel like you have more intimate kind of contact with them through this data stream?
That's a great question. There are cases where I can say that I'm in more contact with students than I was in a classroom, but I think the converse is true.
Yeah.
Where students feel that they're in much closer touch with the teacher online than in person. I'll give you an example. I teach 3 electronics and circuits courses out of MIT on edX. These were the first courses on edX. And this course on edX drew 155,000 students in its very first offering in early 2012. And that number, 155,000, is greater than the total number of alumni out of MIT in its entire 150-year history. So we certainly had the scale. Now, what some of the students were saying was many of them on the discussion forums and so on said that, my goodness, it seems like Professor Agarwal is sitting next to me and teaching me one-on-one. The style of the videos that I created were what I call Khan-style videos. They are really inspired by Sal Khan's videos where it's all on tablet, it's all handwritten on a tablet. And so it's almost as if a student is sitting next to me and I have a piece of paper and I'm writing on that piece of paper and the student is watching the same piece of paper and we're learning together. It's like how one-on-one tutoring works. And so and any number of students have responded on the discussion forums saying that they felt a very personal connection with the professor. And it's almost as if the professor has been tutoring them one-on-one. And they can pause the videos, they can rewind the videos, they can answer questions at their own pace, they get multiple chances at questions. So everything is also running at its own pace, where every student can be learning at their own pace, which is a very personalized form of learning. Where in a large classroom, it's a one-size-fits-all, where I can see that some of the students in my class are asleep. I can see some of the students in the class are bored because I'm going too slow. So it's really not the right speed for anybody. But with the one-on-one style, almost tutoring style of teaching with tablet capture, it tends to be very personalized to students' pace and speed. So in that sense, I think there's a closer connection between student and teacher than you might see in a 100 or 200 or 300 person classroom as I might teach at MIT.
So is this magic, like kind of connection, this intimacy, still valid today? 12 years ago, it was the early years of social networks. We're now flooded by messages and media messages of all kind. Is this magic still there when we're watching a video of a professor, or did we collectively get used to it?
No, I think that with social networks, everybody feels deeply connected to the idol that they can watch on a YouTube video or a TikTok video. If I listen to Sia, and I watch Sia on my a smartphone, it's almost like there's a personal connection as you watch these videos and see some of the celebrities, talking and so on. It's a very deep. It looks like almost a one-on-one connection. So what is wrong with having education leverage the same social technologies to create deeper connections with the students and learners? I think it's only increased today because students and learners of the younger generation are very, very used to communicating and listening to YouTube videos or TikTok videos or whatever. And frankly, my complaint is that they're spending much less time with each other, and they're watching each other also on a screen. I've seen examples of students that are sitting next to each other and talking to each other by looking at their screens.
Yeah.
And so that part is sad. We're losing that connection. But in a world where people are increasingly interacting with their devices, what's wrong with education leveraging the same technology and creating connections with students in a way that students are so used to today, rather than dragging them to a classroom with 300 students at 8 o'clock in the morning when none of them want to be there?
So this is a question that I ask myself a lot. How can we foster like real life interactions more? It seems even dating has come online for a big part of it, which used to be the most intimate part of relationships. And what you're describing really resonates. Still, so coming to this conference, I'm hearing a lot about AI and technology. Going to other conferences, it's probably way worse. We're talking about AI agents interacting with real people. We're talking about AI tutors teaching content, thus replacing humans. Are we going with the flow, like having less and less human interactions, or can education really foster those real life contacts?
Look, there are few things in life where the answer is one extreme or the other extreme. I have a lot of gray hair.
I have some too.
And I've seen in life, sometimes we may make rhetorical arguments at the opposite bookends to make a point, but generally, virtually all answers are somewhere in the middle. And similarly with education, there will be a lot of online learning. There will be a lot of AI tutoring and AI content production and so on. But at the same time, we need to get the human touch in there as well. Just as with social, I think going to one bookend where humans stop interacting with other humans face to face but focus on a screen, that bookend is not good. I think humans need to talk to each other, and humans need to be able to sit together in a group and maybe attend a conference or attend some settings or do a project together. The bandwidth of interaction is just huge, where on a small screen, I might look at the face of another person or a second person, and that's it. The bandwidth is limited. It's one or two people, and I'm seeing some facial expression, and that's the connection. But in a small group, I can have 7, 8, 9, 10 people sitting together where I'm watching every interaction. I'm watching hand movements and gestures and excitement and the pitch of the tone of voice, and it's a whole environment that. So the bandwidth of communication, and I don't mean physical bandwidth in terms of bits per second. I mean the total amount of information that I have that I can react to is just incredible. I'm watching everybody else. Everybody's watching everybody else. It's very hard to replicate that in with the screen or even with virtual reality. So I think the physical connection is important. And so either extreme, only physical or only online, is not a good thing, whether it's for education or social or anything. I think something in the middle is a good thing, where you're spending a significant amount of what you're doing virtually, but you're also spending some amount of time in real connection, with physical connection and interaction with other human beings.
So what do you think? Is it going to get worse, or did we reach that extreme already where people are talking, sitting at the same table and interacting through a phone? Is that one extreme, or can we do worse than that?
I think people sitting at a table and interacting by phone is it is pretty extreme. I can imagine much worse extremes where, at least here, people are sitting next to each other, where somehow we have created some kind of social pressures to bring people together to at least sit next to each other. A completely worse interaction will be where everybody retreats into their cave and is interacting with others through a device, and the whole window into the world is a small device. That is a much worse situation. So my hope is that we, particularly with the younger generation, we create much more physical interactions. And the good thing is sports. Now, I know video games are probably people spend more time with video games than real sports, but I hope that activities like sports and projects and so on will bring people together to engage physically together.
I do both. Video games and sports.
That's good. So that's a good middle ground. So
talking here right in the middle of the Open edX conference, and you mentioned that edX exists among this galaxy of Open edX platforms. And I'm grateful for that. This galaxy exists thanks to edX in many ways. So you've been here for a few days now. Unfortunately, you're going to have to leave pretty soon. But any insights that you got? Like, did you learn things from the community? So, well, we connect in real life once a year. So we work all year long through screens. It feels great to meet in person. So do you get to learn through this increased bandwidth with the people that you meet here?
Absolutely. I get to learn that through the increased bandwidth. And on the Open edX side of things, what I find exciting all the time is chatting with the whole incredible developer community. There's hundreds of people from the Open edX community that are gathered here. And one of my most exciting things, beyond, of course, meeting old friends and saying hello from all parts of the world, to me, the one particular exciting thing for me is as I talk to some of the developers and creators and inventors, some of the new ideas that I see being built in Open edX are incredible. Things that, in maybe just a month ago, I talked to people saying, "Oh, I just dream about that." And you come here, and people have built it and integrated that into Open edX.
Can you give an example?
Oh, there's a whole bunch of examples, and so there's a whole bunch of examples in tools for collaboration, in tools for mentoring, translations. I mean, there's just a whole number of tools that use AI. In fact, you were asking me, have I played with GenAI before? And one tool I was playing with just about 2 weeks ago was an Indian company that has built a platform where you can give it a prompt and it will create a complete edX course for you using our various open source materials. And whether you believe in all the open source materials or not, to me, just the value add of a course being instantiated by a prompt, just a course shell being instantiated, that's a big deal. That's a big value as an Open edX instructor.
So why is it a big deal? Is it a big deal because it makes it much faster to create content, or because it makes it much more accessible to people who do not know how to design courses?
I think it's all of the above. So a lot of people, particularly with technology, a lot of people struggle with the technological nuts and bolts. They might be good educators, but they might struggle with the technological nuts and bolts. But now, if I can have an interface that's AI generated, that helps me translate my ideas and concepts into courses, it's just such an incredible UI. So that's one way to look at it, and you can keep iteratively improving and developing the course. And so previously, to create a good edX course, you'd be working with a videographer, a good learning designer, and maybe a couple of engineers if you want to build a new set of problem types. But things are getting easier and easier. So that's just one example of some of the cool things that the Open edX community is developing. And the fact that they're all contributing many of these technologies back into the open source is such a big deal, because people build upon each other's work and keep innovating. And so, my hope is that this community becomes the premier leading engine for, digital education throughout the world. So this is much more than an education platform. I think this community is about really thinking about the future of education itself, and not just a platform.
You're describing how we can use these tools to create courses. You mentioned that you kind of use part of those tools to create this new course today that you're working on right now, AI in education and learning. So if you had to go back in the early days of edX when you were creating the first MOOCs. What would you do differently if you were to create the same course today?
You know, what is interesting is that the way we built the first course on edX would be so totally different today. So when we built the first course on edX, we had a whole team doing it. It was almost like creating a new product. There were engineering folks, there were designers, videographers, and it was incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
I remember as I created some of the interleavings of the videos, or I created an exercise, or my colleagues created exercises. We were writing Python scripts, and we were hacking HTML or other basic intermediate forms to develop the content. There were no tools available as such, so it was incredibly hard to build and debug the course and the content. And if there's a bug in a problem set or whatever, you actually have to go and start literally debugging code. But today, there's so many tools available. edX Studio didn't exist in those days. Today we have edX Studio.
Okay.
And frankly, after those difficulties, I remember chatting with our head of engineering, Rob Rubin, at that time, and I said, it's costing us, several $100,000 to build an edX course simply because it's so hard to build. And if we do this, we're going to end up with 10 courses. But we need to get to thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of courses. And so, my discussion with him and product was, look, we need the equivalent of an editor that makes it easy for normal human beings to create courses. That's how edX Studio was born.
So that's the genesis story of
Yes.
Studio. Cool.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
And there, the fact that some of us were users of the platform was critical in us telling the product team that we need to go build an editor because we are finding it hard to create courses ourselves. And in the first days, we had one course on edX, and then in the fall, we went to 4 courses. And then when Studio came out, we went to 100 courses in 6 months.
Yeah.
And so Studio was, I think, probably the single biggest advancement of the scale and accessibility of digital education, that making it easy for normal human beings to be able to create courses.
Okay, so I'm an open edX nerd, like a real nerd. And so I'm curious to hear more about these genesis stories. So I'm guessing the Studio was created after the X blocks and or maybe at the same time as X modules, because when you were building OpenEdX, you had to invent some sort of standard learning unit format. There were some formats existed at the time, but they were not great.
So we began to use a Lon Kappa, which was which was a format created by several colleagues at other universities and so on. And so edX certainly kept evolving. I think X module preceded the X block. X block came later.
Yeah.
And may have been happening around the time Studio was happening as well. But I don't recall the details of that at this point.
Okay, that's too bad. I was hoping to get some tidbits of fun. So going back to OpenEdX and the fact that it enables a multitude of platforms, I think you were always very much focused on making those platforms accessible outside of the US, outside of the big universities, making those platforms affordable. And I'm wondering how you feel about this. Has OpenEdX reached its potential in terms of accessibility? Basically, how can we reach more people in more different contexts?
That question is, of all the questions you've asked, the closest to my heart. edX and OpenEdX has always been about increasing access and quality education, not just any old education, not just multiple choice education, but quality education. And so, I like to joke that unless something has 6 zeros in it, it's not interesting to me. And so scale is very important. And when we launched edX, in 2011, I still remember, in an opening speech at the announcement conference with Harvard and MIT, I said, look, I'd like to reach 1 billion people around the world. And now, and at that point, the target was reach 1 billion people in about 10 years.
Yeah.
And Open edX was a big part of the strategy, because edX could only work with, today it's a few hundred universities and institutions and governments that we work together on the platform, but there's thousands and tens of thousands of more that didn't have benefit. So open sourcing the platform was right from day one. In a founding announcement, we announced this is going to be open source. And what I discovered is that once you make a press release and announce it, then no one can take it back. And so announcing that this is going to be open source was critical, because it pretty much forced everyone's hand down the road that this is going to be open source. Hey, we announced it. And so we did open source it in around 2013. And that certainly expanded the size. And so today, I think between edX and Open edX, I don't know, give or take, we've reached about a couple of 100 million learners around the world.
Yeah, I think that's a figure, yeah.
So we've shot by a whole factor of 5. So we need everyone's help, including your help, to get to 1 billion. It's taken us little over 10 years, but we are within a factor of 5 of 1 billion.
So I know this is an interview, but I'll give you my opinion. I always felt the open source part of Open edX was just one part of the story. And I've always been frustrated with the fact that the courses themselves are not shared between platforms. So we have this whole community of people launching Open edX platforms, and we don't really share our courses.
I'm into sharing in a big way. My initial course on edX out of MIT, we divided that into 3 courses. And I've open sourced the 3 courses under a CC by SA open source license. So it's a shared course in that sense. But that said, I think your question had to do with everybody creating courses on Open edX instances. Isn't there a way to somehow syndicate or somehow share all the courses?
There is. Yeah.
And I would, frankly, I would love to see every single course that has been created, maybe they all single sign on into edx.org or something, and anybody can go and learn and take any course from anywhere, and we can find ways. I know people are spending money and livelihoods have to be supported and so on. So maybe if people pay for a course, there's a way to revenue share across all of that. And so I would love to find a way to see that.
It's not just that. I would really love to be able to pick a course from MIT and like take a unit and use it in my real life programming class with high schoolers, and maybe modify some content and share that content again, and maybe MIT will pull some of my content.
You're speaking very much like a software developer.
Yeah, I am.
It will never happen.
Okay.
And so in software, we are really well versed in borrowing and pieces of content. We use libraries and whether it's various Python libraries or AI libraries, or it doesn't matter, IO libraries. The culture of sharing. We share libraries, we share code. Very rarely do I write, if I write a new program, very rarely do I start writing from scratch. My style is I usually pick